It is the great death sentence here. And today we're going to be doing a what if / power scaling video of the Mortal Kombat 1 tournament in the new era, the Mortal Kombat PS5 game. So basically we're going to be talking about what if the other Earth Realm warriors competed in a Mortal Kombat tournament and fought against the same enemies that Raiden himself did. In my opinion, the Mortal Kombat tournament has taken an extreme backstage, even though Mortal Kombat 9 story mode had some extreme story flaws, and you really think about it, it's regarded as one of the best ones, aside from that dumbass Sindel plot twist they do at the end. It had a pretty decent story mode with all the characters we actually care about, going on adventures in their version of form. And the tournament arc of the stage there are actually 2 Mortal Kombat tournaments, so they pay the Mortal Kombat tournament some good enough attention on Mortal Kombat 9, even if, there are a lot of plot holes, such as teammates fighting against each other and Raiden assisting certain enemy factions and, other shit like that. But aside from that, it's cool that they at least attempted to do the Mortal Kombat tournament. But Mortal Kombat 1 didn't even try out the tournament. The tournament was they just catered to it, but they didn't really try anything. First of all, Raiden was the only person to compete in the Mortal Kombat tournament. Neither did Earthrealm Heroes did. And I know because I think it's implied that Sindel won the last tournament, so because she won, she was able to critique the rules. But it seems kind of, scumbaggish and unfair of Sindel. Sindel is, portrayed as this, very humble and good guy leader, and then she puts, not only is this technically a battle for peace for Earthrealm, but she decides to, Mortal Kombat can only select one person to fight against at least 10 plus opponents that Raiden had to. You know what I mean? Sure, he's able to rest and get rested between, but still, he's only one guy fighting against all these other people. Had it not been for plot armor and the element and, the fact that he is a god, or at least was a god in the original timeline, he would have for sure lost his shit logically. But that's either here and there. Even this has some narrative flaws, but I find it extremely disappointing that none of the Mortal Kombat heroes participate in the Mortal Kombat tournament. A better way to write this, in my opinion, was to have all of the heroes fighting the tournament and then lose, lose 1v1, eventually lose, and then Raiden has to make up for them. So at least they take out some of the hurt before Raiden pretty much finishes them off. This is similar to how Mortal Kombat 9 tournament was written, where Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, Jax, all of them participated in the tournament. They knocked off some opponents, but eventually lost. By the time Liu Kang came, he just squashed the 3 strongest ones, that being Shang Tsung, Scorpion, Goro, and Ermac. And, they took out all of the small for before eventually being defeated. It would have been cool if Kenshi, Johnny Cage, and Khan actually compete in the tournament. We got to see awesome character interactions. They were actually, fighting as rivals. They could have made this, honestly, one of the best tournaments. It could have easily made it structured. But instead, this could have easily been a third act of the game. But it doesn't even feel like a third act of the game. It feels like an extremely small portion and feels more like a small part of the story that just wanted to hurry up and tie up the tale, the more intricate, more interesting story. But while I honestly kind of get it, it is, like I said, it's a shame that it could have done way more with the Mortal Kombat tournament than they originally did. Wouldn't be surprised there was some cut content to make the tournament longer. But anyway, that's besides the point. Today we're going to power scale each of the Earthrealm warriors and see if they could defeat every single opponent, outworld, the top outworld combatants that we see in the story mode. Now, Raiden didn't fight against Tanya or Melina due to story reasons, or he didn't fight against Rain either. But just to make things more interesting, we're going to add them to the Mortal Kombat bracket tournament anyway, just to make things more interesting. Since I'm also going to be, adding the Lin Kuei, that means Sector, and Cyrax, the gender swap versions. Smoke, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero are also going to compete in the tournament, and you know what I mean? So we're going to see how each one of them could, go. This is going to be a gauntlet style video where one of the Earthrealm warriors will basically fight a gauntlet of Rain, Tanya, Shao Kahn, Reiko, Li Mei, Melina, and Katana, and see who they can defeat, in terms of, story and scaling and power scaling. And if they lose, then we move on to the next combatant. So this means every single warrior that resides in Earthrealm is going to participate in the tournament, and all the top warriors of names anyway, and the Outworld will compete. So, to make it clear, Sub-Zero, Scorpion Smoke, Cyrex, Sacred Johnny Cage, Kenshi Kung Lao will be fighting against Katana, Molina, Lee May, Rico, Shao Kahn, Tani, in the ring. So, we're going to go ahead, without further ado, let's begin the scenario. So, the first combatant we're going to do is Johnny Cage. Johnny Cage is easily the weaker out of all the Mortal Kombat heroes. We're going to power scale him in his story, but he doesn't really have any, solid victories. And the few victories he has a lot of, asterisk to it. For one, this version of Johnny Cage doesn't even have his fucking powers, unfortunately. So he doesn't have his powers. And I find this very stupid. Me personally, I always hate when Mortal Kombat films shy away from Johnny Cage giving him his powers. He's had his green energy orbs since day one of the video game. They typically give Liu Kang, Katana, and everybody else their powers but Johnny Cage. Sometimes they'll spare the Shadow Cape because that's one of his, staple moves. For some reason, they've been always shy about giving him his green energy orbs, and it's really fucking weird. In recent media, they've catered to it. For some reason, Mortal Kombat 1 took away his green energy, which was very weird, a weird choice to me. For like I said, he's had it since the beginning one of the game, and we even have an explanation for it. It's not that Johnny Cage just some random guy with powers doesn't explain. They have an explanation for it. Basically, he was a descendant of, some aliens or gods or whatever, and that's why he has powers. It's similar to Liu Kang, Sub-Zero, as Sub-Zero are descendants of Outworld people who had powers, and now Sub-Zero has the powers, Sub-Zero and Kuala Yang. So basically, they're descendants of aliens and gods, and that's why they have these mystical powers. But for some reason, they always take Johnny Cage's powers away. It's really fucking weird. But anyway, this version of Johnny Cage doesn't really have any powers. He does use his Shadow Kick in the story mode, so maybe he has slight increased strength, speed, and durability. And the combat and his gameplay is him charging up energy and using it to fight. So maybe he has a slight iteration of his powers, just not, the long range energy balls. So maybe he kinda has superpowers a little bit. It's really unclear. They don't really acknowledge it, in the story mode. In cutscenes, he deadass fights with zero weapons and just uses martial arts skills, and he pretty much jobbed out everybody. He does have a fight with Sub-Zero and seemingly gets the upper hand, but Sub-Zero was very likely holding back and probably not trying to kill Johnny Cage, at all. And if you were to go for the kill, calling Liu Kang right there, and will probably stop him. So he doesn't really fight against anybody. The only person who he's actually above is Kenshi. He does defeat Kenshi, and Kenshi probably wouldn't have gotten any stronger. It's worth noting that after this, Kenshi trains with the Shaolin monks and gets way stronger since he's able to defeat Tanya and Rain, other combatants in the story mode. So it's very possible that in that 6-month time frame, maybe Kenshi surpassed Johnny Cage. Like I said, I really don't know. Like I said, power scaling with the combat is really fucking weird. But Johnny Cage is, easily the weakest. He has 0 victories in the story mode and the cutscenes. Like I said, because they took away his powers, they debuffed the shit out of him, nerfed him for absolutely no reason. So unfortunately, even with Mortal Kombat's lucky power scaling the plot armor and basically making a character invincible if they have a chapter, Johnny Cage is one of the few Mortal Kombat characters that's actually consistent, at least in this, iteration of him. He's weak as fuck and can't really beat anybody. He has 0 victories in the story mode, and he has a brief fight with Goro, but it's unclear how the fight ended off screen. So due to his damn near lack of feats and the fact that he's literally just a regular guy with no powers, maybe slight speed and super strength, he's gonna get defeated. I can't see him getting past a single combatant, in the roster. So he immediately loses. Next up is Kenshi. Kenshi's probably the second strongest, or not second strongest, but the second weakest in Mortal Kombat hero bracket. Now Kenshi with, his sword and his powers is a whole different story. And we'll do a bonus round with him too, but discussing base Kenshi, I guess you could say, he's actually pretty strong, and it's possible he's even stronger than Johnny Cage. The reason why I think he's stronger than Johnny Cage is that in the story mode, Johnny Cage, and Kenshi go to training with the Shaolin monks, and it's implied that Johnny Cage was kind of just sleeping through the lessons and not really training us all up. kind of like a Michelangelo. So it's possible in that brief time period while Kenshi was definitely focused in training that Kenshi surpassed him, since he outdoes Johnny Cage easily, not only in the story mode but in gameplay. In gameplay, he has access to a sword, can do a lot of moves and moves really fast with the sword. And the armor that he wears in his suit, I think, increases the strength and speed by a little bit, at least it's implied to. But you have access to, so he can do a lot of combos. He defeated Tanya, and he also defeated fucking Rain using only a fucking sword and some moves. You know what I mean? So this is without his powers, by the way. So defeating the top 2 combatants probably puts him above all the others. So in my opinion, he would probably, since he beat Tanya, and you know, Liu Kang even admitted that fighting against Tanya, he would likely be tested. This suggests that Tanya is probably the strongest of the female warriors, second to Li Mei, since, you know, she lost to Li Mei. But yeah, it's unclear. Melina probably is physically stronger than Katana, but isn't, you know, as skilled as her. We're also adding Melina to the roster as well. So for the let's see who Kenshi can get past. He already defeats Tanya and Rain, probably beats Reiko, Melina, and definitely Katana. Now he might lose to Li Mei, since Li Mei did beat all the rest of the Outworld Warriors doing, you know, when her and Liu Kang were, you know, fighting against Sindel's army. So he could lose to Li Mei. Also a possibility of losing to Shao Kahn. I doubt Tanya can defeat fucking Shao Kahn. Even though Shao Kahn is weak as fuck in this one, he's still pretty strong and has some pretty impressive feats. Please keep in mind that even though Raiden is only one of them, Raiden is definitely one of the strong, since he literally has the power of a god and has access to the amulet, which is basically a counter to Shinnok's amulet. But yeah, so I think he defeats Rain, Tanya, Reiko, and Katana, possibly Melina, but he gets defeated by Shao Kahn and Li Mei based on feats. Next we have Kung Lao. Now Kung Lao is an extreme, you know, warrior. He's supposed to be the second best to Liu Kang in the original timeline. Raiden is essentially supposed to be the Liu Kang. Kung Lao is definitely the strongest out of all the warriors, you know, base-wise. But getting back to Kenshi for a second, if we give Kenshi Sento and his mind reading abilities and all of that shit, then he likely blasts through all of them and more than likely probably defeat Shao Kahn. He helped defeat Ermac, and he defeated he defeated large portions of the dragon army using his telekinesis and all of his other powers. He can also read minds. He's extremely strong, and you know, he becomes pretty much undefeated. Again, like I said, he helped defeat Ermac, he helped with the escape, you know what I mean? He helped defeat Shao Kahn and Li Mei later in the story mode, so he technically has victories over them, even if it was with help. But then again, you know, we don't know how how the fights work, but him and Reptile defeated Shao Kahn and Li Mei working together. So I think one-on-one he could defeat them. Again, Shao Kahn isn't as strong as he usually is, and he does have powers. He can manipulate large chunks of rock, you know what I mean? To him and Ermac basically soloed all of the army, and they're kind of portrayed equals in this game. So yeah, I believe he has a really high chance of defeating Shao Kahn and possibly clearing the bracket. But yeah, getting back to Kung Lao. Now, Kung Lao was extremely strong. He's above base Raiden, and he did get defeated by, you know, Lightning Raiden. It's unclear how much Raiden was even trying to defeat him, but he did defeat Kung Lao before he even got the powers. So Kung Lao gets defeated, and after this, he doesn't really have any feats after this. He doesn't do as bad as Johnny Cage. He holds his own against Tanya, so he doesn't get outright defeated by Tanya. And then during the story mode, he fights against, you know, all the other villains in the background. He has the upper hand on Reiko, you know what I mean? He is pretty strong. He's slated to be the second strongest monk. He has teleportation, higher martial arts skills, and has a short range, which seems to be a Hadouken on his side in this, you know, in this one. And he doesn't really have any feats, to be honest with you. He does defeat Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Smoke, but again, they were holding back, and Sub-Zero apparently says that if they hadn't held back, then he would have gotten crushed. And he does have powers, but he doesn't really have any victories. If this was Kung Lao in the original timeline, then he would be a beast, or likely cure all of them. But he struggles against Tanya, then he gets knocked the fuck out by fucking Goro. So, it's not really looking too good for Kung Lao, to be honest. If I'm being real with you, he probably doesn't clear any of them. He maybe could beat Katana and Reiko, and that's kind of pushing it. Like I said, Kanalao did nothing but get absolutely destroyed. He gets one shot by Goro, and then he does defeat some Tarkatans and all the other shit. He helps defeat, Ermac and all the other warriors, but again, the problem with chapter shit is that, Ashura basically defeated all the villains, while Kunlun defeated all the side cameos in the background. But yeah, Kunlun would likely lose the tournament, sorry to say. And so with all the small fry out of the way, now we get to the big guns. Cyrax, Smoke, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, the Lin Kuei. They do a lot better since they actually have fucking powers and, are pretty ranked up in the story mode. The Lin Kuei are buffed as fuck, and they focused a lot of time on them. They are extremely strong. Let's go ahead and go over them. You know what I mean? We'll save Sub-Zero for last since he's my favorite. But yeah, anyway, so now let's discuss the Lin Kuei. So the Lin Kuei, we have no idea why they didn't compete in a Mortal Kombat tournament. Apparently not a single Lin Kuei member has competed in a Mortal Kombat tournament, and they don't really tell us why. But we hear that Sub-Zero says that the reason they don't compete is because Outworld would lose every single tournament if they did. And to be honest with you, given this tournament and the feats that Lin Kuei have, I wouldn't be surprised that's true, but it's likely not true. And this is Sub-Zero being egotistical because he is extremely arrogant in this timeline. And Scorpion says they have more of a mission, assassin, protective type role. This means that I believe Liu Kang has, the Earthrealm warriors in different factions. Johnny Cage, Kenshin, Kunlun, Ashura, Reptile. The more, I guess you could say, lighthearted brute force of the team probably goes on occasional missions, but just exists to defend the realms. While, the Lin Kuei go out and, do secretive co-op, missions, and, basically, the Lin Kuei is like Liu Kang's Black Ops team. So basically, when the defenders lose a tournament or whatever, or invaders come, that's when the Lin Kuei, gets involved and takes them all down. But anyway, let's go ahead and discuss how each of the Lin Kuei members will do in the Mortal Kombat tournament. First up is Sector. Now, Sector is kind of hard to power scale because she does defeat people on Outworld team, but the alternate versions of them. She loses to Cyrax the first time we see her, but Cyrax is pretty strong since she also defeated Scorpion and even saves him a couple of times in the story mode. So Scorpion and Cyrax are probably rivals, with Cyrax having a slight edge. And Sector defeats, Shang Tsung or Quan Chi, but these are all Chaos versions of them. But Noob Saibot in the intro implies that the Chaos versions are slightly stronger than the previous versions. And even Tanya and some of them got to get their asses kicked by, some of the Chaos versions. So Sector is likely above some of the high-ranking members of Outworld's warriors because she does save several of them in the first battle of Chaos Reigns. And she also defeats several warriors, but again, they are Chaos versions of them. And we're also told that it's kind of implied that from the Shang Tsung timeline and the Havoc timeline that these versions are slightly stronger than the original versions, at least in this timeline. You know what I mean? They're implied to be that strong, to be honest with you. So because of this, Sector might also get past a lot of them. She already basically outdid Tanya and outdid several members of them when they all got damn near slaughtered by, Chaos by Havoc and his, Chaos soldiers. So Sector is pretty strong, and she also fought against Noob Saibot and helped beat him, defeated him, and contain him. So, like I said, Sector is pretty strong, and she's also above the monks. And, her and Cyrax defeated, Johnny Cage and Smoke, which is a decent feat. So, because of this, I believe Sector is probably way stronger. Probably Tanya would most likely defeat Rain, Reiko, Lee, May, and I believe she would probably get past all of them, to be honest with you. Melina is pretty strong, to be honest. She defeated Ermac, which, now likely Jared was probably, interfering in the battle, which is why Ermac lost easily. And when Melina gets controlled by the Target virus, she's strong enough to defeat an extremely powerful version of Sindel. So when Melina is overcome by Target, she's probably one of the more stronger combatants. So Sector probably likely loses this one, to be honest with you. And so because of that, she probably defeats basically almost all of them, but it's except Tarkat Melina, since Tarkat Melina is really strong. And since I'm just not realizing how Tarkat Melina is, Tarkat Melina likely defeats superpowered Kenshi and Kun Lao and all the us other Reformed warriors. But moving on, now we have Cyrax. Cyrax is pretty strong. She is seemingly above Scorpion. She even saved him a couple of times in the story mode. She defeated Smoke, Johnny Cage, and several monks. Likely would have defeated Kun Lao had they came into combat. So she's, again, pretty strong. So I believe that she would get past Rain, Tanya, probably Shao Kahn, Reiko, Lee May. Loses to everybody basically loses to Tarkat Melina, to be honest with you. Like I said, Tarkat Melina is pretty fucking strong. And then Katana. I believe Cyrax would get past most of them. Like I said, she defeated Scorpion, Johnny Cage, Smoke, and even fought against, some Chaos Rain people. You know what I mean? Rain and Tanya ain't the biggest part. She's above Sector since she defeated Sector. And so Sector and Sub-Zero working together, as a matter of fact. I believe Sector is way above Tanya, and Cyrax is probably above Sector, meaning she's above Tanya. And Tanya is one of the more strongest. I believe Tanya is the strongest warrior, second to Lee May. So everybody gets defeated. Shao Kahn, like I said, Shao Kahn is extremely weak, so Shao Kahn likes to get defeated as well. And Lee May, and she could lose to Lee May, but it's probably 50-50 on her, but she beats the rest. Next, we have Smoke. Now, unfortunately, Smoke is one of the people that doesn't have too many feats in the story mode. He holds back and he loses against all the Earthrealm warriors in the first half of the story mode. And when it comes to the mission that him, Smoke, and Scorpion are a part of, he does nothing. He gets damn near one-shot by Natara, and then he doesn't do jack shit for the rest of the entire fucking, for that section of the game. He isn't even a fucking cameo character. Like they really fucked over Smoke. I think it's because they got Yuri to voice him. So Yuri was probably, extremely, expensive to pay for, which is why Smoke barely has any lines in the story mode, and why he's only fleshed out in the intros. He doesn't have too many fight scenes. He fights against Sector, but he just loses against her. So all the fights he gets to, he loses because he's holding back, or he's just inferior. So he loses to Sector, and again, Johnny Cage was by his side. So he loses to Cyrax, and then he gets one shot by Natara, and then that's pretty much it. That's Smoke. So we don't really know how strong he is, or he ranks amongst the Lin Kuei member. He isn't really comfortably above anybody, to be honest. The only people he could beat is base Raiden, Kun Lao. He's probably above Kenshi as well. He's above all the base Mortal Kombat warriors. He's slightly stronger than all of them, but after that, he doesn't really rank anywhere. You know what I mean? Maybe he could defeat some of the low-ranking members, but I believe he will lose pretty much to all of them, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think he beats a single one. The weakest of the Outworld Warriors is probably Reiko, since he's like one of the first people that gets defeated by Raiden. So maybe he can beat him, but probably loses to all the rest. Now we're coming to the final big boys. Next one is Scorpion. How will Scorpion do in Mortal Kombat 1 tournament? Now Scorpion is pretty strong. So Scorpion defeated Havoc. He also defeated Bihan, Sub-Zero, who defeated Ermac and Natara working together. So he's above all of them. And he defeated Reiko. He even defeated Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung working together. So Shao Kahn is easily the strongest since he's saved for last, and Scorpion defeated him. So automatically he beats everybody. That's pretty much all you have to say. He beats Rain, Tanya, Reiko, Lee May. He beats all of them. Now Lee May is probably likely above Shao Kahn. I believe she is, but she does get defeated, but later in the story she gets a buff. So it's between her, but he probably beats her too. So yeah, he pretty much beats up everybody. Again, everybody loses to Tarkat Melina, since Tarkat Melina defeated, an extremely powerful versus Sindel, which fucking demigod Liu Kang couldn't even do. But yeah, Tarkat Melina, he loses to Tarkat Melina, but he beats base Melina, definitely. And so next is Sub-Zero. Now, Sub-Zero is not the strongest by any means. Scorpion is consistently above him in the story mode, you know what I mean? But Sub-Zero is probably my favorite, to be honest with you. Another thing I want to talk about is character interactions. I didn't really talk about that, but most of the Earthform heroes will be nice to them, except Sector and Sub-Zero have these big ego, inferiority complexes, Lin Kuei complexes going on. But yeah, Sub-Zero will be the most interesting to me in terms of story. It would be really cool seeing him interact with Shao Kahn and all the other Outworld people, given his more villainous attitude and nature. But yeah, we're going to power scale Sub-Zero. So Sub-Zero is pretty strong. Like I said, he defeated Ermac, Natara, Quan Chi, and Shang Tsung. He's above all of them, and he had a pretty close fight with Scorpion. I don't like all the other heroes. He didn't just outright lose to Scorpion. He even got a couple of good hits in. It even gave him a huge scar in his eye. And as I believe in, under certain circumstances, Sub-Zero could defeat Scorpion. Like I said, their battle was really close, at least in terms of story. He defeated, Sub-Zero, and then after that, he gets his revenge, and then during, the expansion, he defeats all of the Shiryu members, defeats all of the monks, and captures Scorpion later. So, yeah, Sub-Zero is pretty good. Him and Scorpion are about equal, to be honest with you. They have 2 fights. Sub-Zero wins and then Scorpion wins. You know what I mean? And he's pretty strong. Ermac is easily one of the strongest warriors. I believe Ermac is probably stronger than Shao Kahn and definitely Li Mei. You know what I mean? He beats Tanya and Melina almost at the same time, and they barely beat him, to be honest. And the main reason you could argue that maybe Jared was, interflicting with Ermac during the fights, and maybe he weakened Ermac due to him trying to take control of Ermac mid-fight. So you could argue that, but even if you don't, he is pretty strong and pretty above her. So his victories against Ermac, his victory against all the other Earthform heroes, who defeated all the other Outworld soldiers. So Sub-Zero is pretty strong. It would likely beat, the rest of them. Him and Scorpion are about equal, and again, Scorpion already defeated Shao Kahn and Shang Tsung. So yeah, he gets past pretty much every defeats Li Mei, Reiko, Tanya, Rain, and base Melina. And, pretty much everybody else. So the victors of the Mortal Kombat tournament, the people who win for sure, are Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Cyrax, Sector, and Kenshi could likely win. Everybody else loses, such as Johnny Cage, Kung Lao. Base Kenshi probably doesn't get that far, and yeah, pretty much all of them, and Smoke. These characters are just either extremely nerfed about a story or don't really have any feats. So fortunately, all of them lose, but pretty much almost every single of the Lin Kuei wins. They're easily the strongest Earthrealm warriors, and the Earthrealm warriors with actual fucking powers also win as well. So yeah, that's pretty much how I think they would all do a decent job. I think most of them would lose, but the more high tier power ones, with actual powers, would win because they have story mode fights, and these are real fights, not just training or practice fights like most of them are in the first act. But yeah, I believe these heroes will win. So yeah, that's the video. Like if you enjoyed it, Dev Send It's out.